If you've just clicked on this video, then you know that RDSPs exist, which is great because they're one of the least utilized Canadian tax-advantaged investment accounts. Now, we've talked about the TFSA, the RRSP, and the RESP before on this channel, and you've probably heard about those accounts before too. But the RDSP, or the Registered Disability Savings Plan, is much newer than those other accounts. Now, it was actually created in 2008 by the Canadian federal government to help people with disabilities gain financial security for their retirement. And even though it's existed for almost 15 years now, less than 1/3 of people eligible for an RDSP actually have one. So in this video, we're gonna let you know who's eligible for an RDSP, and if you are, how you can get government matching of up to 300% and up to $1,000 per year. So let's get into it. The first thing that we should cover is who's actually eligible for opening up an RDSP, because it's obviously a little bit more specific than the other Canadian registered accounts are. So there's 4 things that you have to have in order to open up an RDSP. You have to be 59 years or younger as of December 31st of the current year. You have to be a resident of Canada, you have to have a valid SIN, and you have to be eligible for the disability tax credit. Now, the disability tax credit is a federal tax credit that helps people with disabilities reduce their income taxes, specifically because a lot of the time people with disabilities have expenses that other taxpayers just don't happen to have. Now, you do have to get approval for this tax credit by completing the required forms, by meeting the criteria, and then by being approved. And the high-level explanation of actually meeting that DTC criteria is that a doctor has to certify that the person has severe and prolonged impairment. So if you do go ahead and fill out the required form and you are approved for the disability tax credit, then not only will you get that tax credit, which is great on its own, but you'll also be able to then open up an RDSP. Now, like I said earlier, a lot of people who are eligible for the RDSP don't actually have one. And if that's you, we're gonna explain why you might wanna go ahead and actually open one up.
Now, there's a few different benefits that the RDSP has, and the first one is that it's tax sheltered. In this case, all of your investments in this account grow tax-free. So this means just like all the other accounts that we've covered so far, the word savings in RDSP is once again super misleading because ideally you wanna be using this account to invest your money. So if your money is just sitting there in cash, kind of like if it was in a savings account, then you're not taking advantage of the free, tax-free growth. And instead, if you were to use that money to buy investments that grow over time, then you'd be truly realizing the benefit of this account. Now, also, just like the other accounts that we've covered so far, you wanna be investing in safe, passive, long-term investments so that you're not losing any money. The focus is your money growing over time for those future retirement years. Now, on top of your investments growing tax-free, the other major benefit of the RDSP account is that the Canadian government will match your contributions and provide additional bonds to low-income households in order to incentivize more people with disabilities specifically to open and actually use this account. So first, let's talk about the Canada Disability Savings Grant. The CDSG is given to anyone who has an RDSP account, and the government will match contributions made, so the money that you put into your account, up to $3,500 annually and up to a lifetime maximum of $70,000. So basically a max of $3,500 per year for 20 years. Now, keep in mind that this is the best and largest government matching program that exists for any of the registered accounts. We just covered the RESP, and the lifetime match is up to $7,200 for this account. This is almost 10 times that. Now, like I said, it's up to $3,500 annually, but it does depend on your income or your family's income if you're a minor. So if we take a look at the income threshold as of 2021, once again, these are the numbers that are available right now. If a family makes $98,000 or less a year, you would need to deposit $1,500 a year yourself to get $3,500 from the government. Basically, they triple the first $500 you contribute and double the next $1,000 contributed. So in other words, you get a $3 grant for every $1 contributed, up to $1,500 per year, and then you get a $2 grant for every $1 contributed, up to $2,000 a year. Now, if a family makes over $98,000, then the government gives a $1 grant for every $1 contributed, up to $1,000 a year. So now the last thing to know here is that you can receive grants for contributions made up until December 31st of the year that you turn 49. So try and get all the matching that you can up to that $70,000 max before you turn 49.
So on top of the CDSG, or the grant, there's also the Canada Disability Savings Bond. Now, this is also given by the Government of Canada, specifically for low-income Canadians with disabilities. In this case, you can get a bond of up to $1,000 per year without even contributing any money yourself, up to a lifetime limit of $20,000. So you can get up to $70,000 through the grant and up to $20,000 through the bond, for a total of $90,000 given to you if you're low income and able to contribute that minimum to get the government matching. So let's break down what they define as low income based on these 2021 limits. Now, in this case, if you make $32,000 or less, then you're eligible for the $1,000 bond. If you make between $32,000 and $49,000, then you get some of the bond, just less than $1,000. And if you make over $49,000, then there's no bond available to you. Now, something else that's really cool about the grant and the bond is that you can actually carry forward your unused grant and bond room for up to 10 years at a time until you hit 49 years old. Now, let's explain how that actually works. Basically, if you were eligible to open up an RDSP in the past, but you just haven't yet, then you can still have up to 10 years of grant and bond room, and you can make catch-up contributions for those years to get the government matching grants. So since the RDSP was created in 2008, if you opened up an RDSP in 2018, then you could claim the unused grants and bonds from 2008 to 2018. But if you opened up an RDSP in 2021, then you can claim the unused grants and bonds from 2011 to 2021. Now let's use an example to explain how this would actually work. And keep in mind that we're basing this on the example that's on the Government of Canada website specifically. So let's say that you have a disability and you've had an income of $15,000 every year since 2008. You're eligible for the disability tax credit and you haven't opened up an RDSP yet. Now in 2021, you do open up an RDSP, so you can use your grant and bond money that's been growing for the past 10 years, since 2011. You would be allowed to have $1,000 in bond money per year that you'd get as soon as you open up the account, and then based on the money you start contributing to the account after you open it, you could have up to another $1,500 per year at that 300% matching rate. And then you'd have $2,000 per year at the 200% matching rate. So that's $10,000 right away, and then up to $35,000 based on your contributions.
So we've talked about putting money into the RDSP and the government matching, but what about actually withdrawing your money? When it comes to all the registered accounts, this one, believe it or not, is one of the harder ones to actually take your money out of, specifically because the government wants you to keep your money in there until retirement. Now, keep in mind, it's not hard to take the money that you've contributed out. You can, in theory, do that at any time, but because the government is providing grants and bonds to you for future retirement, if you withdraw money from the account that's been in there for less than 10 years, you have to repay the grant and bond money back as well. Here's how it works. If you withdraw money from your RDSP that's been in there for less than 10 years, then you have to repay $3 for every $1 you take out, up to that total amount of grants and bonds paid into your RDSP from the past 10 years as well. So you actually have to repay the oldest to newest money in that order. So for example, if you put in $5,000 3 years ago and you want to take that money back out, all of it, you'd have to pay up to $15,000 in grants and bonds, assuming you had that much in there. Basically what this means is that the RDSP really should be an account used for future you and not for yearly use. Again, you can take money out of the account, but you're losing that free money when you do that. Now, one of the exceptions to this is that if your life expectancy is less than 5 years. So if that's the case, then the person can actually withdraw up to $10,000 a year from their RDSP without having to repay any of that grant and bond money back. Now, however, when this person withdraws this money, it is taxable. So they'll have to pay their tax rate on that up to $10,000 amount. Let's make this part really, really clear, right? When we withdraw the money from the RDSP after 10 years, there are 3 categories of money in that account, right? So there's 1, what you contributed essentially. 2, there's the government grants and bonds, and 3, there's the income earned from your investment. So how much the money actually grew. Now, your contributions can be taken out tax-free anytime. However, the government contributions and the income growth are counted towards your income for the year that you actually withdraw that money. And once again, you're now taxed at your typical tax rate on that money.
Now, if you've been watching our other Canadian investment account videos, then that means you already know we're working with CDIC on this video, otherwise known as the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation. They're a federal crown corporation that was created by Parliament in 1967 to insure bank deposits up to $100,000 per category that are held at any of their member Canadian banks or federally regulated credit unions. And what's awesome about CDIC existing is that you automatically have their protection if you bank with one of their member institutions if they were to fail. Now, the new news is that as of April 30th, 2022, so just over a month ago now, both RESPs and RDSPs have separate coverage of up to $100,000 each. And overall, CDIC will protect your deposits in 8 different categories. And within those categories, they'll cover saving and checking accounts, GICs and other term deposits, and foreign currency. But they don't cover mutual funds, stocks, bonds, ETFs, or cryptocurrency. Now, eligible deposits held in RDSPs specifically are protected up to a coverage limit of $100,000 per beneficiary at each CDIC member institution. Now, if you want to learn more about CDIC and how they protect your money in RDSP specifically, we'll leave a link down below for you.
All right, guys, so that's a wrap on the RDSP, and a big thank you once again to CDIC for working with us on this video, and yeah, all the other past Canadian account videos that we've done. We do have one last one coming up in this series, and it's all about trust accounts, so yeah, make sure you're staying tuned for that. And as usual, make sure you show us some love down below. Make sure you subscribe right there in the corner, and as usual, check out our previous videos next door. We will be back. You know the vibes. Let's go.